Chapter 6. Waking up in the darkness of night, Zero came to terms that a few hours had passed. He imagined this is how Lucinda felt on the chopper. He recalled tasting her blood. He had been able to taste poisons, oils, other people's blood, whilst tracking targets which never negatively affected him. What was in her DNA? He asked himself. Using his knee to get up, Zero went right back down to all fours. He experienced enfeeblement to the point where his strength was cut to more than half. Forcing his body forward, Zero clung onto the brim of the rusted sink. Groaning, he pulled to get a solid base. Hearing a creak, then a pop, he landed right on his arse. "How could I be so stupid?" Zero remarked. Fed up by the situation, he stone-heartedly rolled to his stomach and, using a push-up motion, got standing. Stumbling past the dead mutates on the floor, he left the dilapidated house. To his right was an old convenience store. Zero let it slip his mind till he saw a flashlight's beams. Moving into the parking lot behind a 2021 Kia Sorento, he waited. From his hiding spot, he looked over the hood. The beam of light was joined by 3 more, making 4 of them altogether. Ducking his head, he caught 2 more searching the backyard. Zero could easily watch 2 lights bouncing around through the broken fence leading to the yard. Prying the driver's side's hubcap off, he felt some of his strength return. His heart was no longer pounding, plus many of Zero's tendons stopped burning. The parking lot was 60 feet wide by 120 feet long. The backyard the 2 lights were coming from was merely 20 feet from him. He had to do something. A man dressed in black tactical gear looked to his female teammate, who wore face paint to improve in concealment. Giving a hand gesture, the male walked by. Taking her eyes off him for less than a second, he was gone. Worried, she shined her beam to find him when a bloody hubcap flew from the shadows. Unable to react in time, the sharp edge sunk into her forehead. It instantly severed her life cord, as if a trapper shears. The disc ended her. Snatching up some supplies, Zero dispersed into the darkness. Putting his SOCOM M4 on an empty store shelf, one of the covert soldiers struck a match for a cigar in his mouth. A metal sound of something rolling towards him drew all this attention to his feet. A green fragmentation grenade showed itself. Realization of the ill fate befalling him destroyed any report he had concealed. The blast comforted the man, alerting the 3 others to the threat. Bursting through the ceiling, Zero jabbed a combat knife blade into his next victim's lung. Releasing the weapon, he grabbed the woman to his right's gun as she fired. The rounds struck down her teammate utterly. Letting go of the rifle he held, she went for a blade in her vest. Swinging downward, she was blocked by the weapon she let go. Pushing down on the attack, held back by her rifle. Firing the gun, Zero then shoved the hostess part of the M4 in her face. Holding steady temporarily, she screamed while reaching for her face. Smashing her in the side of the head with the butt of the gun, she went out cold. Casting the empty weapon to the ground, he heard chopper blades, then the spinning of something else. Abruptly, dead rounds from 2 forward-mounted guns on a Black Hawk assaulted the convenience store. It sprayed 50 caliber bullets all over the darkened building. To finish the barrage, the pilot sent a 70mm rocket. Letting it loose, he waited to see the devastation. From behind, a knife protruded out of the man's throat. "How?" the Black Hawk pilot gargled. The hello began to fall out of the sky. Leaping to a nearby roof, Zero understood it exploded. About 75% of his full strength had returned. Unknown to him, the other 25% would never return. Ingesting a single drop of blood damaged Zero fundamentally. More light beams on weapons were on the way to the fiery crash. He quickly counted over 50 people rushing in his direction. "Time to get going," he thought aloud. Running down the stairs of the 3-story building, Zero ran into the darkness of the dead city. Many of the lights belonging to the soldiers chased after. Slamming down a wooden door, Zero ran across a living room and beelined out into a backyard. He could hear voices, as well as barking, all of it coming closer. Bolting over a chain-link fence, he felt bullets whiz past his head. Sprinting into a patch of bushes, he fell 5 feet, directly dropping face first, splashing in a pool of dirty water. Bursting out of the water, Zero took a deep gasp. Moments later, a large dog landed next to him. Wiping muddy liquid from his face, he saw the muscular Doberman rise from the water. Dog paddling towards him, the dog barked at him. Swimming away from the ravenous animal, he pushed off the bottom of the 5-foot-deep pool. Getting to the edge of the water, he forced his way out, the Doberman's jaws nipping at his heels. Hoofing it once again, he heard another splash. This time, it was a stumbling female soldier who fell in. Then a handful of her teammates fired at him. Rounds punctured the ground all around him as he ran. Going behind a tree, the powerful projectiles riddled the bark. Feeling 2 of them rip into his left arm, Zero cried out, "Right in the arm!" Making their way down while others continued to unleash hell in the surrounding area, 0-1 ran. Blasting the fauna asunder, hundreds of hate-filled hot lead bullets chopped up the woods. Diving to the ground, he ducked, attacking angers. Crawling through the dirt, he took a blast to the leg. "Move!" Clutching the grass before him, Zero pulled himself another 14 feet until he felt a gun muzzle push on the back of his head. Dragging their quarry another few feet, they turned him over as red lasers read every body for 40 feet. Eyebrows bounced up to the recognition of Lucinda's father's voice. Product 01. Product recognized. Animatronic, mutable mechanics festered towards the ears of its acquired atrocities. Mounted guns found there to be red paint, those expecting were unaware of their fate, yet feared something. The little rounds the soldiers put out meant nothing to the desolation of relentless production. Red mist filled the forest of discarded trees. It was everywhere. A chain-link fence decimated because of thousands of blasts, killing mutates, was what it was used for. He didn't believe the words the system stated. Fire. I hadn't even truly geared up yet. Hauser-caliber shells hit, creating the grounds. It eradicated the 50 agents sent to kill Lucinda Hawke. With their deaths, Zero saw that finally, the last, hear me, the last believers in justice died here. Such may be against the hero or against the villain, yet that's not those who were sent. Politics is a general, not what should be done. Zero watched heroes die. The wounds in his flesh stopped him from moving. He screamed as they died. He could have killed them easily, but he ran. Turning to nails and blood, a soldier dropped his gun to save his hurt brother. Tears coursed down Zero's face as he witnessed. "Stop, father, stop!" he yelled. Plastered with blood, he curled into a ball. Zero reached out to the earth, in turn, only finding his feet as he stood. The fatherly words spoke. 01, accepted. Ninhog, already here. Ripping off his right sleeve, he tightly fastened it over his wound in his leg, grounding as he did. Tearing the second bloody sleeve from his shirt, Zero tied it around the leaking bullet holes in his arm. Holding the end with his teeth, Zero pulled the torn cloth tight, wincing. He needed to enter the main lab at any cost. Momentarily at least, his bleeding had stopped. He found a way to the lab's double-door entrance. He travelled through an open, once automated gate. Zero walked towards the steel doors. He limped as he noticed the padlock on the chained handles was smashed off. Understanding how it had been done, because of the heavy rock dropped on the ground, 01 presumed it was Lucinda. Wrenching ajar the 2 doors, he pulled, making the creaking of them loud-sounding. His eyes saw that the lights were on, power still coursed in the old building's transformers. The fluorescent tubes along the dirty 40-foot hallway ceiling were not completely on. Some flashed, while others stayed on, the rest stayed off. Passing straight in, he looked around. crunching a few dry leaves let in the last time the door was open. No noise could be heard but Zero's shoes on the hard plastic floor. Going by his shut door, aged red liquid had once run from beneath the wooden passageway. 5 feet further, on the opposite side, had a rather large hole. On the wall to the right side of the hole were the words, Lab 205. It was printed professionally, painted in black ink. There used to be a doorway here, and something strong didn't just break down the entrance to the room, it ripped it off. The 2 doors at the end of the hall had planks boarding them up. Yellow spray paint marked the doors, Vanaheim. Going directly into the hole in the wall, there he found the entire door frame disregarded upon the floor. Glass from beakers laid all over the room's white flooring, wires dangled from the ruined computers destroyed by some great force. Kicking a piece of disregarded beaker from his path, Zero witnessed a slight glow emitting out of an air duct. Getting closer to the ethereal light coming from the metal grate on the wall, he could see that it was removed recently. A knife tip had undone the flathead screws in the colourless grate. The only reason it was hanging on to where it was placed must have been from the dirt clinging to the opening. Pulling the grate off, Zero let go of it, blocking his face in the process. The blaring glow blinded him merely for a moment, then it seemed warm, welcoming even. Peeking in the duct, he looked, seeing scuff marks moving through the shaft. Pulling the sleeve on his leg taut, he got into the large enough shaft. Crawling towards the warmth, he began to see small roots with the strength to burrow through the hard air duct walls. More showed themselves the deeper he went. About 20 feet along, the tunnel was consumed by these small, yet powerful roots. In the end, he was venturing into an area utterly composed by wound-up wooden branches. The glowing light continued as he saw many brightly coloured flowers all around him. The fauna was unique in many ways, which linked them to varying regions of the world. Why were they all here, together? Zero internally questioned. Cherry blossoms from DC, birds of paradise native to South Africa, bleeding hearts based in Japan, accompanied by tulips located in the Netherlands. Vast assortments of lovely blossoms shone everywhere. Unwilling, Zero had to smash some of them as he went forward. Hearing the creaking of branches, he tensed his whole being in expectation. Snapping, the ground beneath Zero gave out. Yelling, he fell into a 700-foot-deep, 1,000-yard-wide room underground. Splashing into an 80-foot-in-diameter, clear blue pool of water, he was just glad this lake wasn't ridden with God knows what. The liquid felt perfect, Caribbean-like. Floating within, he waited. The wounds damaging his arm and leg closed. The bullets melted wholly. 100% of his power downright touched none of him. Not wanting to leave, only for breath, he left the water. Contentedly coming out of the spa-like bath, Lucinda's clone wiped back his hair. Inhaling, he saw beautiful tilled dirt. Darkly wet, taken care of soil bathed the enormous surroundings. It wanted to grow more life. Walking distance from the feeding pool, recompense Yggdrasil. Indulged to see the horror, he got out of the lake to the sand. The light, its emittance, was gone to his eyes. In truth, his optics had accepted the light. He believed it as normal, so all became such. He found diamond skins acting in camps, giving cooked food to their children who played with what he only saw as toys. Meat was cooked, water given. By the glow of the tree, they breathed. I could say shelter, zoo, war zone. What was left? The word was unknown to him. For what it was, here. To Zero's understanding of all the world's life he had seen, it made no sense to him. Whether future or past, he could not find the correlation. Confused, he went to the tree. Waves of the tree's energy coated Zero. 3 waves welcomed him, pushing him back, yet he went on. It was strange, as if he was going against a strong wind. Blocking his face from the waves, he felt it cease. Moving his hand away, he looked up, acknowledging the enormous tree. It stood hundreds of feet tall. Golden leaves covered thousands of branches which reached out as far as he could see. They even tore into the walls of the hole. Anyanwu, the red lion, slept soundly at the base of the tree. Mimir, the eagle, sat on a thick branch gazing down at Zero. The vast snake, Jorgunmundr, was coiled throughout the golden leaves to every inch of the tree. The wolf, Fenrisulfur, and the brown bear Odin played roughly with one another, batting at each other. Dane, the deer, ate some of the golden leaves it could touch. Every single one of them were 4 to 5 times their normal size, except for Jormungandr. Standing in front of the tree, with her back turned, Lucinda stared up at the golden majesty. Hawk's clothes had been destroyed because of a drastic change to her person. The torn asunder pants, shirt and shoes lay discarded. Smooth golden dragon scales ran across every inch of her skin. The individual scales were very small, almost to a fish's construction. Stopping 20 feet from Lucinda, Zero called to her. "Why did you leave me in that house? And why the fuck are you covered in scales?" He spoke in anger. White drake claws donned both her hands and fingertips. The sharp talons retracted. Clenching her fists, it let off a metal clanking noise. Smiling, she turned to face Zero. Astonished, for the sight he saw was more than unusual. Her eyes shone to be reptilian, with a vertical slit for the pupil. The colour purple filled the iris. Hawk's teeth appeared, sharp, fierce, even. "Did you like how we were welcomed?" "Reading product, not child. Father loved us, didn't he?" Her tone was sarcastic. "None of this makes fucking sense. I'm a genetic clone. You're a lab experiment. There's a 30-foot lion over there." Relaying the absurdity encompassing the situation, he announced. Gritting her teeth, Lucinda beguiled. "What do you know? You're a thing." Resentful, she yelled. "This is how our world is supposed to be. My father, mine. Only advanced evolution. This tree would have grown on Earth at one time or another. Someone as I am now would exist." Grabbing his face, Zero remarked, "You're trying to justify all this crazy shit." Removing his hand from his face palm, he smirked and took a deep breath. "I get it," he laughingly stated, squinting in misconstrued inquiry. Lucinda waited for him to speak. "You are a lunatic," he relented. Taking his comment harshly, Hawk screamed and charged Zero. Extending her new sharp claws, she swung. Backing away quickly, Zero felt the talons cut his chest, causing blood to run. Abruptly, her claw caught both of her wrists and pulled his head back, while she chomped at her enemy's neck. "You've really lost it," he taunted. He forced her back, using a kick to the stomach. Blocking a forward swing, Zero's arm became gashed as well. Sidestepping a second swing, he abruptly smashed her in the skull. Having to deal with such a hard right cross, Hawk's eyes went wonky, putting it on her heels. Going in for another wide-arcing strike, Zero leapt at her, bashing her raised forearms. His knuckles touched the scales, bowed underneath, ripping back a portion of the force. Blasting Zero in the jaw with an offhand, Ninhogg caught herself on her back foot. Throwing a haymaker, she brought her foot forward. Without the impact of her own punch, she took an uppercut. Squaring up, he watched the ex-lieutenant lose some coordination for a moment. No one was home. Turning the lights back on, Hawk's eyes focused. Lifting her dukes, she saw her genetic clone coming back in. Taking 2 more right hooks, she made her chin less of a target, via leaning from a third and a fourth. Tactically retracting elsewhere, she isolated each of his attacks. Her space, added to her indirect motion, made Zero close-blitzed, just far enough apart. Sticking him with abusive whacks, Hawk stayed out of range. Withdrawing, Zero sniffed, noticing blood dripping from his nostrils. "You're becoming quite a sight, Zero," she proudly commented. Cracking his nose back in place, he smirked. "There. Is that better? Right?" Snickering slightly, Lucinda kindly remarked, "You're just like a stupid little brother." Fully smiling at her, he closed his eyes to the seam cutter. Laughing, Hawk plopped down and began to cry. Going to her side, Zero sat down. "You know, this has to end," he consoled. Rubbing her back, her clone waited while she bawled. Wiping her face, she answered, "I know." Putting his large head down next to her, the red lion sat. Looking over to Anyanwu, she patted his forehead. "You knew I'd be here?" Sindra rhetorically asked. Standing, Zero offered his hand. Grasping it, she got up. "Let's finish this." Together with Anyanwu, they went to their Yggdrasil. Halting the rough play they were doing, Fenrisulfur and Odin went as well. Dane the deer ignored everything. Mimir continued to be a spectator. Jormungand did so also. All of them had come to terms with what must happen long ago. Slicing open her left palm, using an extended claw, Nogrid placed her bleeding hand on the golden bark. From it, the area transformed to the colour red. The red expanded to every inch of Yggdrasil, ingurgitating the tree. Its adents inquired progression as the red moved to the full leaves. Shortly, all of the vast tree pulsed, then erupted into light. Miles away, the bright flash could be seen by the whole world. The end.